Well, it's the end of yet another week, and here on this channel that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, the first round of the playoffs have been underway, and a lot of drama has unfolded, so of course there's plenty for us to discuss. In order for you to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now. So if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, it turns out about 62% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel. So please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Honeybun, and they say that Luka Doncic is already a top 5 player in the league right now, and depending on how the rest of the playoffs go for him, he might already be top 2. Now, coming into the playoffs, the Clippers were definitely favored in this first round matchup with the Mavericks, but Luka Doncic has had other ideas. He's played some beautiful and dominant basketball, leading the Mavericks to a 2-0 series lead so far at the time that I'm making this video, averaging about 35 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists so far. No matter who the Clippers have put on Luka to defend him, he's exploited all of the matchups. He's looking more confident than ever, and based on how he's trash talking during the games, he looks ready to prove everyone wrong about the Mavericks' chances. With Luka, the conversation since he stepped foot in the league has always been that he was the future of the NBA and was bound to be an MVP candidate for years to come, but the question was just how soon those days would arrive. Well, I'll be honest here, those days very well might be arriving right in front of our very eyes right now, and the claim that he's a top 5 player right now really isn't all that far-fetched. Obviously, the postseason tends to be what shapes player rankings after the season concludes, so we will have to wait for things to play out fully, but Luka is definitely creeping up to that tier already. There are still players like LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry, and more that will also be in that conversation for top 5, but Luka is just as deserving of a candidate as all of those guys that I named right now. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Munib, and he says that the Lakers always get lucky with Dragic and Bam Adebayo getting injured in the finals last year, and now Chris Paul getting injured in this current first round series. I understand why fans that are rooting against the Lakers would be pushing this kind of agenda, because it definitely does seem very coincidental that injuries like the ones mentioned in the take happen to come against the Lakers, but it's also pretty ridiculous to undermine what the Lakers accomplished last year and what they're currently doing this year. Injuries plagued the Lakers all season long, and it's literally why they fell into the play-in tournament and the 7 seed in the first place, as both LeBron James and Anthony Davis missed significant time this year. That doesn't exactly sound lucky to me. Because of this, they now have an incredibly difficult journey back to the finals, now having to battle with 2 seed Phoenix in the first round, then next round likely having to match up with the MVP of the league in Nikola Jokic, then in the conference finals potentially having to face the 1 seed Jazz, the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic, or the Clippers if they can get their stuff together. And once again, that doesn't exactly sound very lucky to me. Injuries happen in sports all the time, and they're always incredibly unfortunate. But I wouldn't say at all that one team is luckier than others in that regard, especially the Lakers, who had their fair share of troubles with them this season. I wish Chris Paul was fully healthy to make this series much more interesting and competitive, but it's not the Lakers' fault that he isn't. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from someone who is clearly a Trailblazers fan, and they say that if the Blazers end up losing in the first round series against the Nuggets they're currently playing right now, they need to explore trading CJ McCollum and firing Terry Stotts. The saying goes that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and that phrase definitely applies to what has been happening in Portland for quite some time now. In the Damian Damian Lillard era, they have consistently been a team in the tier below legitimate championship contender, and there haven't been many major moves by the organization to try and elevate them from there. They did trade for Norman Powell this season at the trade deadline, but many view it as more of a lateral move, with him and Gary Trent Jr., who they traded for him, being very similar players production-wise. The team has to try to make a push at some point while Damian Lillard is still in his prime, and unfortunately, McCollum may have to be the piece that gets moved. I know the chemistry between him and Lillard has always been very strong, he's a fan favorite, and moving on from guys like that is always difficult, but I just don't see any other realistic path to taking that next step without drastic change. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Raheem, and he says that the East actually have more championship contenders than the West this year. This is certainly a hot take because for quite a long time, the West has typically been the stronger of the two conferences top to bottom, so you would think that there are more teams capable of going all the way in the West. The East this year have three very dangerous teams that sit a tier above the rest of the conference, with the Philadelphia 76ers, Brooklyn Nets, and Milwaukee Bucks all playing outstanding basketball right now, and those three will in all likelihood be the teams battling it out for a chance to go to the finals. The Philadelphia 76ers are comfortably handling the Wizards so far, the Brooklyn Nets are comfortably handling the Celtics so far, and maybe most surprising of all is that the Bucks are comfortably handling the Miami Heat so far with a 3-0 series lead after getting swept by them last year. So that's three legitimate contenders in the East. Does that mean there are fewer than that in the West? Well, I think the Lakers are clearly contenders despite being the 7 seed because they are the defending champs and they're also back to full strength now, so there's one. The Jazz, being the 1 seed, I definitely believe also fall into this category, despite currently being tied with the Grizzlies in their series at the moment, as Donovan Mitchell is back for them now. Then after those two, it gets tough to identify legit contenders. The Clippers were seen as such before the playoffs started, but now they look like a mess for a second year in a row. The Suns without Chris Paul at full strength probably aren't in that category either. The Nuggets are still very formidable, but without Jamal Murray, it's tough to put them in the contender tier. Then the Mavericks are a very bright young team, but they're also quite inexperienced, and I'm not sure you can buy into them winning the whole thing right now either. Crazy enough, this take does hold some weight, but obviously we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.